Hey guys, what's going on? Well, I got this housing in, and it's a prime example of what you shouldn't do to a radio. This housing is a very nice housing. It's a 3000 housing. Decent window. It's missing the knob. It's missing the concentric switch. It's missing the light pipe. And it's missing the top knob. What I'm going to be telling you in this is there are a lot of people, okay, XTS3000s, XTS5000s, these are plastic housings. Plastic can crack. A lot of times through stress and through pressure, not so much abuse, but just through constant use, heat, cold, these are just small thin pieces of plastic. They can crack. If they crack, it's not that big of a deal. You can still use the push to talk without this push to talk housing. What people have done though is they've tried to get this. Let's see if I'm not in a good mood at all. Really not. Dicking around with stuff like this and finding out stuff like this really does not put me in a very good mood. But as you can tell, it actually appears you've got a pinhole here. It actually appears that you can actually disassemble this. You can. And what somebody's tried to do is they tried to do just that. If you look at the parts list, that's the first thing you should do if you've got a radio, is look at the exploded view of a housing. Anything you're going to work on, do the research on. A lot of people have asked me questions, and a lot of times a lot of things I forget over time, and sometimes I need a refresher course on it. So a lot of questions that I get, yeah, I may have dealt with it 6 months ago, but you bring it up to me now and it's like, oh shit, I can't remember exactly how I did that. Well, it's good. Questions are always good, but at the same time, what I usually wind up doing is I usually wind up going into the search box, typing in exactly XTS3000, housing, PDF. There are keywords that you can type in that will take you to spec sheet. If you want to know about your radio, you need to do the research. I can do it in a search box, so can you. So that's a very good thing. An exploded view of this housing would have prevented some moron with very well-meaning intentions, I'm sure, of tearing up a perfectly good housing. Because really, you can't, it makes these buttons here just completely useless. Push to talk, however, if they hadn't have tried to yank this thing off, push to talk would still work. It's just a plunger, guys. The flex on here, who knows if it's good or not. It's just one of these, it's a parts radio, but it rides on, it slides into two grooves. I may be able to salvage as a flex. I think I might be able to salvage the flex assembly and the top. You've got your insert retainer. You've got an insert retainer. The knob is in. Through the exploded view, the knob is in. You've got your knob. Then you've got an insert. Then you've got the let's see, I believe it's the knob, the insert. I believe the insert, yeah, the insert is a part of this dial. So, you know, if you've got a broken dial, hang on, let me get a part because I just happen to have one. If you ever deal with radios and you have an old radio, don't throw a housing away. You can use the parts. This is what I'm talking about. Okay, this is actually two pieces. So actually the light illuminates through this. It's translucent, so I mean it's clear, and it will illuminate the dial. So that actually, there's a light in here, and there's also a light pipe. That light pipe rides in two grooves. You've got to get the grooves lined up right when you're inserting it, and really, if you're going to remove a flex, definitely hold on to this piece right here. Keep your thumb on it, on that piece right there, because it's clear and it's very difficult to find, and it will fly because it's actually loaded under pressure, a small amount of pressure, but enough pressure to spring out and go about 3 feet in any direction. So hold on to that if you're removing the knob. It can be done. It's not that big of a deal. Knob removal isn't that hard. If you're going to remove a volume knob, turn to the best thing I can do, I can recommend, is putting it in the 2 o'clock position and working from the back, remove the knob. It works best that way, and I've done it in multiple videos. I'll do it here. Sometimes the insert will come off. The insert comes off, you've got this, by the way, this is a parts radio. The insert will come off. And you can actually take these off without doing damage to the insert if you do it in a proper way. You can do damage to the insert if you're running up against force and you're trying to use force against it. But you can put this back on, as I'll show you. Locks on. It's not going anywhere. It's on tight. So the 2 o'clock position is a good position to get these off. If you're wanting to get the knob off itself, you can go to the 9 o'clock position, and oh jeez, there we go. 9 o'clock position, the knob comes off. So that's the best way that I can tell you, and through trial and error, and just a matter of the makeup of these insert retainers, that's the best way I've found to do it. When you put this knob back on, make sure it's in the same position, push it down, again, lift up on it, perfect. So there's another thing. If you've got a housing and you're going to remove it, by all means do not use a screwdriver. You know, there's an O-ring that goes all the way around the inside of this housing, and it rides along the chassis of the radio, and it's not really easy to get. You know, you have to sometimes work, you have to hold. It's difficult because when you have this flex on the chassis, you've got to be careful not to tear it. You've got to be careful not to damage, not to have the screen drop. you know, you put the housing on. The best way to do it, the best way I found, is always to hold the chassis upright to where the LCD is pointing up. Don't ever try to put or you could do it actually vertically is a very good way to do it. The LCD only rides on, I think, 3 posts. So, you know, it's just one of those things that you've got a couple things to watch out for. Make sure that when you put this in, you've got it sealed in. You've got a groove around here. Make sure that's sealed in. But this housing is pretty much trashed. This does not necessarily mean anything. It just means that, you know, somebody's tried to go in with a screwdriver and remove the housing. It's a very bad. It looks bad, and there's no excuse for it. You can get a tool, a moto tool, a little piece of plastic that, you know, cost you know, it's a ridiculous price for it, but at the same time, if you've got excuse me, if you've got XTS3000s and XTS5000s, you're going to use that tool if you do any kind of, you know, if you're going to do any kind of housing change. Don't go in with a screwdriver and try to remove a housing with a screwdriver. It will not work. You're going to fuck it up every time. And there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're going to fuck it up. And in many cases, when you try to do that, you will not only damage the housing. Son of a bitch. Hang on. You'll not only damage the housing, you will damage the O-ring that goes around it, that rides along the ridge. So, you know, if you think these teeth are, you know, are in here and you can just, oh, I'll just put a screwdriver right here. It's so brittle, and especially on a used housing, well, used or new, it's so thin. Look at the thinness of it. It's not meant to have somebody go wrenching around with a screwdriver on it. There's just so, it just doesn't take much. This is what you need. You put this in the center of it, you slide it in, the teeth grab on, and sometimes, if you've got an older housing, sometimes the teeth can embed into the housing, especially if it's been sitting up for a long time. 12 minutes in. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm not in a good mood after dicking with this. I don't like receiving stuff like this. But anyway, it will be good for parts though. So there's a benefit, and not only that, just the fact that that you can learn something from something like this. You know, there's something to be said about that, because I've seen too many units that have been messed around with a screwdriver. You can sometimes, when you have this in here, you'll try to lift it out and it'll resist. If it resists, you can help it very gently by using the appropriate size screwdriver and just helping those teeth back just a little bit, not much. Use the tool, and if the teeth are embedded into the housing, you're going to need to use it you're going to need to use a screwdriver in that case. If you do, go in at this position. Don't go in like this. Go in like this, and don't go wrenching on it. Just lift it. I mean, just put enough pressure on it, just to get, come on, autofocus, just enough to clear it. But by God, don't use a screwdriver on that. I've seen too many units like that. It doesn't really do anything, you know, I mean, it doesn't affect the operation of the radio, but it sure doesn't help the looks of it. And there's no point in somebody doing this. And I've seen, you know, throughout the years, I've seen probably 25%, 30, 40, I'd say 30 or 35% of the housings that have small cracks like this due to a screwdriver. I try to avoid those, but at the same time, if the housing's in very good shape, it really doesn't affect the operation of it. But the light pipe, you need to watch out for. The knob and the concentric switch rides along two ridges. It just slides down in there. You do have to line it up with a light pipe. So I think I've covered everything on this, but by all means, don't go wrenching around on stuff like this. You know, I hate to see things like this, and you know, it's really just because it's not because the guy, you know, the person who tried to do this is an idiot. He just didn't have the knowledge base before he started to try this. Because I mean, when you look at it, you know, it does appear that it will come off. I've seen this on. I don't go on message boards and crap like that very much, but I do get on there, you know, occasionally on the web, and you know, I've read the, you know, the comments. You know, can this be done? Can this, you know, not be done? And a lot of the fellas usually are very, very knowledgeable. By the way, just by sliding that in, make sure that you remove the antenna. But just by sliding that tool in, it disengaged the teeth, and it's fine. Also, invert your tool. You invert it when you actually slide it back in, so you relieve the pressure on the bottom of this. You kind of open up. This does have a small ridge. It allows you invert the tool and you slide the housing in. You still sometimes have to massage the O-ring around, because a lot of times the O-ring will peek out through here. If it does, don't use a screwdriver. Leave that screwdriver alone. You can use the tool to massage it in, or you can just simply work the O-ring back in. But if you use a screwdriver on this, guaranteed, it's going to break things. And if you try to dick around with something like this, you're going to have more than just a push-to-talk problem. Now you've got 3 buttons that are useless. You've got a housing that's in very good shape otherwise, but through inexperience and through somebody not taking the proper steps, and it's so simple, because really the internet is your friend. If you want to know anything about it, there's a guy named Bat Dude, and you can type in Bat Dude's tutorial on XTS5000s. It's a PowerPoint presentation, and he goes into in-depth detail, and the guy is very, very good. I got that PowerPoint presentation probably about 10 years ago, and I've referred to that several times. I can't count how many times I've referred to it. And if he ever watches, thank you for putting that out. But you know, I try to kind of explain a few things as I encounter them, and if I run into something that, you know, that is bad, I try to, through the information, I try to at least make up for it, to help some other folks out. But I don't like seeing stuff like this done. There's radios out that if you see something like this, chances are you really ought to just pass on the radio. This came in as a part, and it wasn't a big deal, but at the same time, all the problems with it really ruined the case. There's no use for this housing. there's no way to fix it. So, you know, it's got a nice window in it. You know, would have been a good housing, salvageable, even even the bottom. Bottom, you know, these cracks really don't matter, but at the same time, there's no excuse for it. That tool costs quite a bit, but housings aren't cheap. Go on eBay, you'll find that out very quickly. Housings aren't cheap at all. So, damage is very expensive. But don't go doing stuff like this. It does not pay to do it. Somebody learned the hard way on this, and seeing it, you know, it kind of pisses me off, but at the same time, I understand how somebody, you know, would at least think that that was possible to remove this. It's not. But go to an exploded view. All you've got to do is type into search any question you want, any question you ask me. You can find on the internet. You can type it in a search box. It will take you to, you know, at least 2 places where you can find the answer, and you know, just as quick as I can tell you. So, you know, that's always good, but it's just one of those things. 21 minutes, gee, man. Anyway, if you are going to clean a unit, make sure you clean the inner ridge. You know, check the contacts, make sure all these things are in good working order. You know, it's very critical to keep your radios clean. This keypad, there can be a lot of dust and grime behind it, sand in some cases. White Sands missile range. I remember their keypads had a little bit of sand, you know, that was sitting between the shield and the keypad, or I mean the housing. And you know, I mean, just through the use of your fingers and dirt and everything, yeah, it's good to clean these off every once in a while. But really, by all means, do not do that. Just don't use a screwdriver. Stay away from it. If you need to dust your radio, use a good brush. Just a brush. That's all you need to do. And you should be fine. Take it easy, guys. God, I can't believe it's 22 minutes. But it needed to be said, because I've seen this happen too many times. I've seen too many radios listed that have been damaged in this way, and I've seen probably about 10 of them in the last month listed that look like this. Don't do that. Don't mess with it. You know, if the push to talk button is broken, you can still use it. That plunger is operational. It's not the best idea, but it's really all that you can do. I suppose you could probably put a piece of glue, a little bit of super glue on both sides, because actually that little push to talk thing is so thin that if you put a little dab of super glue on the top and the bottom, I'm sure that would be enough to hold it in, and you would still be able to operate it. But it's kind of, I wouldn't do it. But I'm just saying, I mean, that's something that just struck me just as I'm talking to you. That's you know, if you can't, that little tab's not going to get back in there. It's been fitted at the factory. So, you know, you can probably cut the tab off maybe and put a dab of super glue, put it back in, and maybe it'll work for a while. I don't know. But anyway, just don't mess with this. If the housings, you know, if the push to talk button is broken, you can't replace it. You've got to buy the whole housing. Same way for that. This isn't an assembly. It's part of the radio. It's been assembled at the factory to not come out. So anyway, take it easy, guys. Later on.